Before Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, or Sandra Bland, there was Oscar Grant. The current movement against police terror and for accountability and justice can trace its first iterations to this moment, when Oscar Grant was killed by a Bay Area rapid transit police officer on January 1st, 2009. Captured on numerous digital devices, Oscar's death would be the first murder prosecution of an on-duty Bay Area police officer. Before that would occur, however, Oscar would be murdered in the media and in the court system. It was a triple murder. No doubt, the murders of Oscar Grant tells this story.
"'Tis woman's strongest vindication for speaking that the world needs to hear her voice." Anna Julia Cooper wrote those words in 1892. You would think she's speaking about today. White supremacy and patriarchy, by definition, belittles and ignores the voices of Black women. Some of Us Are Brave, a Black woman's radio program, was a corrective to that, centering and airing the voices, views, and experiences of Black women, documenting them and capturing moments in time. The program aired on Pacifica Radio for almost a decade. Many of those voices have been preserved here, and Some of Us Are Brave, interviews and conversations with sisters on life, art, and struggle. Edited by Thandisizwe Chimurenga.
And we are Black. We are back. We are Black here on somewhere around here. There we are. Black Liberation Media. This is Rootwork on Black Liberation Media. Not root, root, as my mama would say. My name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and today is the last Sunday of Black August. Have y'all been participating during Black August? This is the last Sunday of Black August, but it is not the last Sunday or day, I should say, of me reading from Safiya Bukhari's The War Before and Sanyika Shakur's Stand Up, Struggle Forward. I'm going to finish these books, even as it takes us into what some comrades call Red September. So we're going to do it until it's done. So again, my name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and this is Rootwork here on Black Liberation Media. Thank you for hanging with me on a Sunday afternoon/evening. Please like, share, and subscribe. You know, I've been doing this since August began, every Sunday, reading these chapters of the books. If you've missed out, please go back and check them out. Go back and like, share, and subscribe those. And like, share, and subscribe today. Like the video, share the link to the video. Make sure you are subscribed to Black Liberation Media. Make sure you're subscribed to Rootwork. And yes, I am still coming to you from the void. I absolutely am. I'm off camera because I am incognito or incognigra, whichever one works best. So real quick, want to say hello. Hey, how y'all doing? AQCF, I have no idea what all that means, but you're really grateful for Black August in your life this year and these readings. Well, you are so welcome. So welcome. Thank you for, like I said, hanging out with us. Peace, Snowman. How you bees? One oopsimoth. Okay, y'all will tell me how to pronounce it. How you doing? Peace, Dr. Amilcar Cabral. You know, I'll be clowning. I'm clowned Amilcar these last couple of times. I've used him as an example, but he is actually a distinguished professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. So just because I be clowning him don't mean y'all can clown him. I can do that because we comrades. Hey, Will Red, how you doing? How you doing? Salam. I read the other one first. Hey, Jaman. Hey, Terry Conley. Is that oil house? Okay, I'm not sure what an oil house is. I bet you'll let us know though. And before I forget, because I keep on forgetting, Mac Clubbin. I don't know if Mac Clubbin is here yet, but I got to shout out Mac Clubbin for his consistent support of Rootwork. Thank you so much. And if you want to support Rootwork, the Venmo and Cash App are scrolling right there at the bottom of the screen. Don't let Matt Clubbin be the only one to hold up this show. You know, I'm a big girl, I'm heavy. Give that brother some help. Help him out. Dub King Reggie, how you bees? Oh, you had a productive month in community. Good. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. Yeah, Black August is a time of recommitment, not just remembering, but what did you recommit to? I recommitted to more writing, which I've kind of done, kind of made it, and actually more reading. But I also made this commitment to read from these books for the month of August. You were tiny brick structures next to the lighthouse on colonial plantations. You were creating tiny brick structures, huh? Okay. Yeah, you did say productive. You created something. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Okay, Dub Key spending August recovering from knee surgery. Ooh, that's painful. Amilcar Cabral is my namesake, but I'm not Amilcar Shabazz. Uh-oh. Wrong one. Okay, you still a comrade. It's all good. It's all good. Amilcar Shabazz, yes, is the professor at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Oh, okay, that's what oil houses were. Ah, okay, I got you. I got you. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, so we are going to get started. And I had been starting with Safiya these last two Sundays because previously I had started with Sanyika's, and those were kind of lengthy. Actually, today Sanyika's, at least two chapters, are not as lengthy. So I'm just going to go ahead on and start with those, and then we get into Safiya. Ooh, that does. Yeah, I don't know. I be trying, y'all. I be trying. I be hoping. Well, actually, let me see about this. Maybe if I can take myself out the situation, huh? Maybe that will be larger for y'all. And if not, hey, Althea, Althea, how are you? Hopefully, like I said, you'll be able to zoom in on whatever it is you're viewing, or you've got the book or you've got the PDF and you'll be able to read along. I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying. So we are going to start with, you know what? I'm not even sure what chapter this is, but it's the next chapter in Stand Up, Struggle Forward of Sanyika Shakur's book. Come on, real quick. No, give me a sec. Give me a sec. Give me a sec. There we go. Okay. And it's called To Be Like, relatively short. Also, let me know in the comments, please. I have got the air. Hold on, not the air conditioning. Hold on. See there, check spicy. Hold on. Let me know in the comments. I've got a fan blowing behind me. Hopefully y'all can hear that. I mean, not hear that. Hopefully you can hear me okay, and the fan is not obstructing. So somebody let a sister know what's going on. All right, so this is To Be Like from Stand Up, Struggle Forward, Sanyika Shakur. to be like. To be a lapdog of US imperialism, you have to be like mindless soldiers who voluntarily sign up to oppress other poor people. You have to be a mindless entertainer. While on BET, you floss a street swag in an attempt to fool the youth into believing you are in the same position as them. Then you run off to the Whitest House to do a Motown review or put on the lights of a Christmas tree, where you rub elbows with other collaborators and oppressors smiling, soft shoeing, and doing your best impression of high culture. Now, this was written in 2013, or the book was published in 2013. I'm not sure what year this essay was written, but if you didn't catch that, he's talking about the entertainers who go to the White House and perform. When he says run off to the Whitest House, okay. To be kept safe and alive out of harm's way and in front of cameras as a weapon of mass destruction, you have to act angry, as if you have a real issue, while promoting foreign cars, exotic jewelry, expensive liquor, outrageous fashions, and naked women. You have to coat your body in a gaggle of meaningless tattoos, throw up a gangless sign, and frown menacingly through some obnoxious, face altering sunglasses. You have to mention guns, sexual prowess, hate, obsessions with the insane, absurd. You have to flail your arms wildly and do a two-step walk that resembles a war dance from a street org you're not a member of, nor would ever be considered for. You'll need to cover your natural teeth with metal and glass sold to you by the oppressors of your people. You'll have to do all this under the watchful eyes of a security firm that keeps those you're trying to fool at a safe distance, lest they test your gangster and realize that it is not what it is. To prevent this occurrence, you'll be better off doing your video in the safe confines of a studio in front of a green screen where images can later be computer generated onto it. What you can't do, however, is mention the following: national oppression, patriarchy, homophobia, capitalism, neocolonialism, protracted people's war, socialism, communists, revolutionary nationalism, the Black Liberation Army, imperialism, liberation of political prisoners, self determination. Or that Obama is an Uncle Tom to the 10th power and a Zionist. In other words, you can floss in tomfoolery all day on 106 in Park. You do know that BET is owned by CBS, that CBS is one of the major propaganda pillars of the settler government and thus the bourgeoisie. As long as you employ the meaningless formula of fluff, pomp, posture, and posing, you can stay 106 in Park countdown for 19, 20 weeks. As long as you promote collaboration, parasitism, Black Americanism, a willingness to be angry within the established boundaries of colonial legality, you're touted as a star. You know the business: anger, undirected rage, pseudo struggle. From your infantry work, distracting new African youth, once you've proven worthy in this regard, you'll be promoted up the chain, literally, as a small bit actor in hood movies, then independent films, and maybe even a major motion picture. And if your show act is that believable, you could get a position on a TV drama as, of course, a pig. And let's be clear, whether you portray a detective, a Navy investigator, or a medical examiner, that's all pig. You are an entertainer in a business that promotes, supports, and contains national oppression. In your pursuit of money, which you've been led to believe is freedom, which you are now trying to make others believe, you've been played all the way out of pocket. Now they got you singing and dancing at memorials for imperialist troops killed in colonialist actions. They'll move you onto the country music circuit, a New Year's celebration in New York, a tour of duty in the hoods and barrios to promote participation in bourgeois elections, in defense of charter schools that promote nothing but dependency and white supremacy. They'll parade you on Extra, Entertainment Tonight, and Good Morning America. They'll have you begging your nation for money to support the victims of the earthquake, tsunami, and radiation leak in one city of rich ass Japan, while down the street, Mrs. Johnson can afford to eat and also pay for her medication. Support one city in Japan while your whole nation is under a genocidal tsunami. Good work, idiot. Another video, another tattoo, another chain, another car, another half naked dance, another stitch in this satin lining of the national coffin. You're not significant enough to be a nail in the coffin. Don't fool yourself. You're only a small thread, a mere stitch in the lining. That is all. The thing is, however, there's no shortage of you bastards. But trust and believe, the revolutionaries are coming. Again, this is from the book Stand Up, Struggle Forward, which was published in 2013. I do not know when that particular essay was written. Therefore, I'm not sure which entertainer he was talking about and what they did, but we can, I'm sure, lay this template on just about all of them. Next up, the reverse Nuremberg defense or the robot defense. And again, because I'm text spicy, even though footnotes are accessible here, I'm not going to try it. You just going to have to buy the book or find a PDF and look up these footnotes for yourself. But there are footnotes contained throughout Sanyika's book. The reverse Nuremberg defense or the robot defense. After the Second Imperialist War, in which the US, France, and Britain smashed on Italy, Japan, and Germany, the victors put on a show trial in Nuremberg, Germany, where a clutch of Nazi functionaries were tried for war crimes, convicted, and subsequently hanged or shot. To be fair, however, some were acquitted and others given lengthy prison sentences and spared the death penalty. The defense presented invariably by those soldiers and functionaries on trial was, quote, I was only following orders, end quote. In essence, kicking the responsibility for their actions and obvious atrocities up the chain of command to their superiors, arguing that had the orders not been given to do as they had, the atrocities would never have occurred. Further, they stressed that their outfits were such that the complex bureaucracy prevented any actions that were not explicitly ordained from the top. This defense entered the public domain, or stream of human consciousness, i.e., the Matrix, and has since become known as the Nuremberg defense, e.g., I was only following orders. Apparently, the Nuremberg defense has trickled down even into the often cutthroat and chaotic stocks of criminality. However, as is often the case in such things, the already weak and feeble defense has been perverted further, inverted actually, and turned on its head and utilized as an excuse to not act in one's own best interests. It's a strange phenomenon to observe as ones who profess to be in resistance, conscious, or about struggle, do fantastic, mind boggling acts of knee jerk gymnastics to justify why they, in fact, cannot support an action that would serve the interests of all involved, including themselves. But as the contradiction of our oppression here in the SHU sharpens, those who are about absolutely nothing are being exposed as the reactionaries that they've always been. That in spite of all the harsh words they use in their points, bylaws, and whatever, they are about nothing. Well, that's not altogether true. They are about something, but it's just totally reactionary, anti people, and collaborationist. Sanyika Shakur often wrote about the SHU, the secure housing units that are throughout California state prisons. I'm sure they have names for them in other prisons, but these are basically the isolation cells where prisoners are kept away from general population. They don't even have a cellmate. They're locked by themselves in a room, maybe 23 hours a day, maybe 24 hours a day. Sometimes let out for an hour a day, sometimes let out for an hour a week. But allegedly, these are the prisoners who are the worst of the worst, the troublemakers, the violent, etc. And if you are a politically conscious prisoner, an organizer, or a revolutionary, the SHU is for you. Hence, Sanyika would always find himself in the SHU whenever he was in a California prison. Here's the thing. We are collectively locked in the SHU indefinitely. We have SHU terms without any rules violations. In fact, a prisoner can literally murder another prisoner in the general population and only be given a 5-year SHU term. Once his or her 5 years is up, she will be let back out to the main line. However, if the same prisoner is found with a birthday card signed by fellow prisoners with, say, an indigenous number, 2 bars and 3 dots, then that is going to be used as a point towards giving that prisoner a life term in the SHU. Similarly, if the prisoner is found with study and struggle material from Comrade George Jackson or some Kiswahili or Nahuatl words, those are points to be lodged against the prisoner as the authoritarian gang investigators go about their so-called investigation to validate the prisoner in question. So, as you know, because this is Black August and y'all have been studying, George Jackson was imprisoned on a $70 robbery charge from 1 year to life. That was an indeterminate sentence. They might let him out after a year. They might let him out after 5 years. It could go on and on and on. Eventually, in the 70s, California switched to determinate sentences. If you were given 5 to 10 years, 5 is your minimum. You could be out after 6 years, or you could do the whole 10. What Sanyika is saying is that the SHU, secure housing units, have now replaced indeterminate sentencing. It's no telling when you could get out and for quote unquote frivolous reasons, or what the prison authorities would not say is frivolous. What they would say is it's a threat to the security of the institution. They would label you a gang member, which is what validation means. They would validate you as a gang member in prison. Therefore, you are to be kept away. If they had the writings of Comrade George Jackson or utilized Kiswahili, the black prisoners in particular, Kiswahili, because of linguistic privacy, that's how they would communicate in the prison. So if they had Kiswahili or the writings of Comrade George as an example, and we know in Los Angeles from the organization I'm with, Black August Los Angeles, if they had material that said the words Black August, they would be said to be members of the Black guerrilla family, therefore keep them locked up indefinitely. Nahuatl is an indigenous or Native American language. So, if the other prisoners were using Nahuatl, or if you were Black and knew Nahuatl, obviously you're trying to communicate in something that you don't want the prison to know about. Therefore, quote unquote, security risk. Therefore, quote unquote, you stay in the shoe. In the shoe. Of course, once one is validated by having the so-called 3 points, which somehow prove one's membership in or association with a prison org, she can come up for an inactive, active review every 6 years, 1 year longer for a mere review than a prisoner who murdered another prisoner would do before getting out of the shoe. So you murdered a prisoner, you're given 5 years in the shoe. In your fourth or fifth year, you're found to be, or even in your third year, let's say you got a copy of the San Francisco Bayview newspaper and it says Black August on it. So now you're going to be in there until at least 6 years, and then you will come up for a review. And if nothing else has happened, they might let you go. But now you've been there for 6 years and you were only sentenced to 5 years. Make sense? Hopefully, I'm not mucking that up for you. Come on, man. Where is this thing at? Okay, where are we at? Where are we at? Oh, my goodness. Here we go. Okay. Of course. No. We already read that. There we go. So, for learning about one's culture, its indigenous language, its revolutionaries, and national identity, i.e., politics, one is set upon by the political police, the institutional gang investigators, IGI, and whisked off to one of the three shoes operating in the state, or left for years on end in one of the administrative segregation units, ASUs, waiting to be sent to a shoe. The height of repression, in its most crystallized form and nakedness, is the shoe here at Pelican Bay State Prison, Northern California, and within its already repressive confines of listless solitary or the wicked doldrums of the short corridor. 4 blocks on the D facility side. For those there, it's a constant struggle to maintain a sense of self and collective awareness. For those not yet in those blocks, it's a slow motion psychological torture session as one waits to be told to, quote, roll up your property, you're being moved, end quote. It's akin to cattle being slowly moved towards the electrified cattle prod and slaughter. They know that the cow that was near them is now gone, moved, and never to be seen again. 2 or 3 times a month, prisoners are plucked from among us to be moved. We all know where they're being sent and why. The short corridor for maximum repression. So the collective call has come out of this camp that we have an obligation to ourselves, our nations, our cultures, to resist this authoritarian reign of terror. That regardless of what your particular politics are, the hammer is upon us all as prisoners here in the shoe on indeterminate status. As one comrade said, quote, today it's us, but tomorrow it will be you, end quote. A general call was issued, and those connected made the effort to make those in the immediate vicinity aware of the issues. Words came through from other countries. This is how tight the security under here is. Words on the general effort were transmitted via other countries to us before words made it across the camp grapevine. Nevertheless, the words and issues were received, given to those in the same condition as everyone else. Some words were even particularly spelled out, and yet, as if in a bad comedy, some prisoners said, quote, "We haven't gotten any word on it," end quote. So around 2011, there was a major strike in the prisons throughout the state of California, protesting SHU and uh, other goings on in the prisons. SHU sentences, indeterminate sentencing, being in isolation. I'm almost positive this is what Sanyika is referring to. The Nuremberg defense was inverted from "I was following orders" to "I was given no orders." One has been reduced to a mere robot in essence, capable of working in one's defense only when someone is programming it or stroking its keys. Okay. Here's the analogy we're working with. Someone is drowning, flailing his or her arms wildly, when all of a sudden it dawns on him or her that, hey, no one told me to try to save myself. I didn't get the word to resist an obvious death, to get to a dry spot and save myself, and perhaps save someone else who, in the future, may end up almost drowning. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But of course, it's deeper than that. If it were only that simple, we might be able to get past this with some degree of overstanding. However, things have a materialist basis in reality, and as much as we'd like to sometimes think otherwise, things don't mysteriously, what? Fall from the sky. That is Sanyika's go-to phrase. How is it that we've been so biased against our own survival? Let's look at this for a minute, because it may prove fruitful in our future endeavors as the contradictions sharpen and the struggles intensify. We're not talking about going out into, say, a working class area and trying to convince the proletariat about the evils of capitalism, about the inherent oppression in colonialism, where people have hot dogs, baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet to distract them from their awful lot. No, nothing that complex. We're talking about prisoners who are in the SHU without ever having violated a rule, forever indeterminate, and subjected to the most inhumane conditions imaginable, who languish at the absolute bottom of a totally antagonistic and hostile society. We're talking about prisoners who are in the hole for exerting their culture and national identity. But we are talking about humans, the material beings that exist inside of nature, who, in spite of being at the very last and lowest rung of a class-based society, have their own set of internal contradictions and dynamics that create motion, that ultimately drive interests. We are talking about criminals, parasites, who have colonial or petty bourgeois mentalities, which is to say, a non-revolutionary class that depends largely upon the working class for its sustenance. And by colonial mentality, what is meant is that one recognizes the legitimacy of the settler government and its rules. Regardless of whether one breaks the rules, one still ultimately and objectively believes in the inherent right of the bourgeois state to govern them and oppress their nation. To not struggle to end oppression is to legitimize it through inactivity. I'm going to say that one more time. Regardless of whether one breaks the rules, one still ultimately and objectively believes in the inherent right of the bourgeois state to govern them and oppress their nation. To not struggle to end oppression is to legitimize it through inactivity. When Safiya and Masai and Mutulu and Sekou and Kuwasi Balagoon, when they stood up in court and after having been captured for their various activities on behalf of New African independence, when they stood up and said, "We are prisoners of war. We do not recognize your authority. You do not have the authority to try us." That's what they were doing. We don't recognize this court. We don't recognize you, judge. We don't recognize the United States of America and its laws over us. This is illegitimate. To not struggle to end oppression is to legitimize it through inactivity. With the hunger strike that's looming, some prisoners, mainly those who are the most reactionary, i.e., those who are stuck watching go nowhere programs on TV all day, those who read nothing more serious than a novel, and those who can't string together an intelligent or thought provoking sentence, either verbally or in writing. Conversely, these are the someones who'll dominate the tier for hours with a litany of absurd jokes and mindless intrigues about things that have absolutely no bearing on real life. It's these loud, often braggadocious reactionaries who have led the charge in inverting the Nuremberg, did it again, the Nuremberg defense. Those who, in spite of their tough demeanor in the safe confines of their cells, obviously don't really want to go to the main line, don't want the protest against the indeterminate status that may get us all back out into general population. And here we come across a glaring contradiction that needs to be expounded upon. He could be talking about black folks on the street, let alone in a prison. There are some, if not most, who only know prison as the shoe. Some prisoners were validated in reception, i.e., when they first got to prison, before even getting to any mainline, i.e., general population. Their whole prison experience has been nothing but single cell living in 8-cell pods on walk alone yards. Human contact consisting of momentary finger bumps through the heavy industrial metal slab covering the cells. These prisoners know only handcuffed escorts and 10-minute showers 3 times a week. Visits through the thick plexiglass windows under the never blinking eye of a camera. To them, this all seems normal, regular, just the way it is. And to be frank, it offers a perverted sense of "I'm tough" to the young prisoner, creating the illusion for him that all this is to contain him and that this somehow proves his toughness. As I had said a few paragraphs earlier, the shoe units are what they say are for the most violent, the most criminal, the incorrigible, and political prisoners. So for you to be stuck in the shoe, that says to the other folks, "Oh, you all that, you that dude." Now, were you to be let out of the shoe onto the main line, people might find out you really ain't that dude. On the flip side, of course, there's the convicts who understand that all this is nothing. These are the men who've been in Old Folsom, San Quentin, Soledad, Tracy, and New Folsom. Those who've seen and felt the actual power of prisoners, who, for whatever reason, have been with the herd and know that this here, all this single cell, walk alone, 8 cell pod living and escorts, is not a consequence of anyone's toughness or one's badness. On the contrary, it's a sign of our collective weakness. Dialectically, our weakness means the pig's strength. That's how that works. Convicts used to run prisons. Not anymore. Yes, those who are yes, those who are in prison have been convicted, but to be a convict is another animal altogether. Don't want to waste too much time on this. Prisoners have grown complacent in the maintenance of their social structure. This camp, Pelican Bay, has without question taken its toll upon us. However, we are still committed, or at least should be, to the breathing. Some, however, have allowed the appearance of being tough to impede their recognition of struggling against the conditions that are grinding us into dust and simultaneously struggling for the very things that ultimately allow us to hold our heads up, chests out, backs straight. Those who have pulled out and then inverted the Nuremberg defense are out of pocket. They are comfortable under here where they are safe, individualistic, and have no responsibility other than a morning and evening roll call or gossiping through a steel door to the next pod. The real convicts, those who know and have experienced collective struggle, die lonely deaths of the spirit daily under all this isolation, knowing in their heart of hearts that this is no big display of our toughness. Fortitude, yes, in withstanding the years of this desolate living, but that one's criterion for toughness is to mingle and move with the herd, to effect change in a collective setting where conflicts can be challenged and resolved in appropriate settings. That's what the righteous do. So, in closing, I'm just trying to make the courageous aware that those who ain't really about nothing will ultimately do nothing, and have furthermore rejected the idea under the upside down Nuremberg defense. The path of least resistance has always been chosen by the faint of heart. The state has taken the initiative in this struggle to destroy us all. It is up to us to wrest that initiative back from them and save ourselves. By doing so, we save others from a similar fate. I'm not sure how many folks are here from, maybe this is your first time being able to check in with us, being able to sit in as I read from Sanyika Shakur's Stand Up, Struggle Forward. But as I keep repeating, Sanyika graduated from elementary school. We didn't have middle school back in the 70s. He graduated from elementary school, 6th grade, got jumped into the gang that night, and that was it for school. If you read his book, Monster, Autobiography of an LA Gang Member, I don't think you hear school mentioned or read about school being mentioned anymore. It was during his stretches in correctional facilities for the next several years that Sanyika educated himself. This is the writer and the thinker, Sanyika Shakur, formerly known as Monster Kody Smith, a 6th grade graduate, an elementary school graduate. So yeah, let's see. Hey, Toe Jam, how you doing? Hey, Manifesto. Yep, bars. Bars. Okay, what you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? What you talking about, AQCF&C? You feel compelled to zoom in even closer to the people inside, then and right now and tomorrow, who are already disabled and neurodivergent across the spectrum of needs for acute supports, who may never get access to the facts of their medical and psychosocial preconditions, which may and are and can be used against them in court and inside. Man, we ain't gonna talk about what it's like to be disabled or neurodivergent in need of medical care in prisons. We're not going to talk about that right now. We don't have enough time to go into that. There needs to be a week of shows on that. It is ridiculous. Plantation books created to terrorize the community. Whoo. I'm not going to clown people for getting here late. I'm not going to do it. Yes, absolutely powerful. Yeah, Sanyika was talking with Tupac one time and recorded the call, and nothing, unfortunately, was able to come up, whatever it was that they had planned. But yeah, just want to make sure y'all that it is coming through, that y'all can hear me, that y'all can hear what I is reading, what I is putting down. All right. All right. I am going to take a 2-minute break for some juice, no gin, wet my vocal cords up, and then we're going to go into The War Before by Safiya Bukhari. I shall be right back. Okay. What are you doing, dancing? Discipline for life. Oh, alrighty, tidy. This is chapter 8 of Safiya Bukhari's The War Before. We too are veterans. Post-traumatic stress disorders, and the Black Panther Party. I know that's right. Editor's note: this is a slightly edited version of an article by Safiya. I call her Safiya. I call her Safiya. Anyway, not Sophia. Safiya. Ashanti Austin, I've heard him call her Safiya. I'm sure she'll forgive me. Anyway, this is a slightly edited version of an article by Safiya in the Black Panther Black Community News Service from February 1991. In talks she gave in Chicago that year, Safiya mentioned that she was working on a book on this topic. According to Ashanti Austin, and a parenthetic line at the end of the original article, which says, "The above is an excerpt from a book on the subject to be released in the spring." This essay would have been a chapter in that book. But Safiya was too busy with organizing work to write the book. In several interviews and speeches, Safiya returned to this topic of the psychological and health damage suffered by people in the battles of the 60s and 70s. She also talked about the psychological effects she and others experienced as a result of incarceration and especially of solitary confinement. This article, including its title, reflects the general understanding that the movements of those years arose in the context of a state of domestic war between oppressed communities and the U.S. government and law enforcement structures. It also hints at Safiya's ongoing battle with her own grief at the loss of too many of her comrades to death, prison, or exile. You know, as I've said before, I didn't know Safiya well. We were, comrades in the same movement. I had called her and played phone tag with her, and beginning around June of 2003, we didn't get back in touch with each other. She passed that August. But what I know of her from what she has written, from what she said in speeches, how she has conducted herself, what her comrades said about her, this woman was so absolutely committed to making folks aware that people have fought for our liberation and have been incarcerated. They are still there. They need to be let out. They need to be supported, and they need to be freed. When I hear the expression eat, drink, sleep, such and such, they live it, they breathe it, they eat it, they sleep it, they drink it, it consumes their being. That is what this issue had for Safiya. It consumed her. The treatment of her comrades, the fact that they were still in, is what drove her. I feel confident in safely saying that about her. It is, I guess it's unimaginable, but yeah, it consumed her. It consumed her life. Safiya was about that business. That was her ministry. Okay, shut up. I was 19 when I joined the Black Panther Party and was introduced to the realities of life in inner city Black America. From the security of the college campus and the cocoon of the great American dream, I was suddenly stripped of my innocence by a foray into Harlem and indecent housing, police brutality, hungry children needing to be fed, elderly people eating out of garbage cans, and hopelessness and despair everywhere. If I hadn't seen it for myself, I would never have believed that this was America. It looked and sounded like one of those undeveloped third world countries. Between 1966 and 1975, eager to be part of the fight for the freedom and liberation of black people in America from their oppressive conditions, thousands of young black men and women from all walks of life and backgrounds joined the ranks of the Black Panther Party. They were met with all the counterforce and might of the United States war machine. Not unlike the young men who went off to fight in the Vietnam War, believing they were going to save the Vietnamese from the ravages of communism, the brothers and sisters who joined the ranks of the Black Panther Party with all the romanticism of youth believed that the rightness and justness of their cause guaranteed victory. We were learning the contradiction between what America said and what it did. We were shown examples of the government's duplicity, and we became victims of its counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, an all-out, multi-phasic war designed to stifle dissent in America in general and in the black community in particular. We came into the struggle believing that we would prevail because our struggle was right and just, and we said we shall win without a doubt. All we had to do was present an organized and disciplined united front and be determined to gain our freedom by any means necessary, and our victory would be assured. We theorized about what we were up against. We marched, sang, and rhetoricized about the implications of being, quote, in the belly of the beast, unquote. We dissociated ourselves from anything or anyone who had been close to us and regurgitated the bravado about the struggle being primary, that in order to win, we must be willing to sacrifice mother, father, sister, or brother. We embraced all this in much the same manner that the drill sergeant in the Marine Corps psyched up the recruits to fight in Vietnam. Veterans of the war in Vietnam. In 1967, my brother came home from Vietnam. He looked good. There were no scars or missing limbs. We were ecstatic. His bedroom was next to mine on the second floor of our duplex apartment in the Bronx. In the middle of the night, I heard agonized screams coming from his room. Not knowing any better, I went to him and touched him to soothe him. He instantly went on the attack. He grabbed me with one hand, his other like a claw. I don't know what saved me, whether it was my screaming his name or throwing myself on him, but he came to himself before he harmed me. That night, he told me about watching his entire platoon get wiped out, about gouging eyes out with his bare hands, about not knowing who was the enemy and what direction it would come from the next time, and some of the other nightmares of Vietnam. After that, we never talked about it again. Before going to Vietnam, my brother had wanted to become a doctor. After returning from Vietnam, he could not stand the sight of blood. He drank straight gin continuously, like ice water, without getting drunk. My brother made the horror of Vietnam real to me in 1967. I wasn't to experience anything remotely close to that again until I joined the Black Panther Party and came to realize that you didn't have to travel around the world to experience the ravages of war. The physical conditions of the Vietnam War were not present here, but for those of us who had been raised to believe that America was the land of the free and the home of the brave, and who are now involved in a struggle for liberation and human rights for Black people, the psychological conditions were just as intense. We joined the Black Panther Party, and therefore the Black liberation struggle, with a lot of hope and faith. We believed that the struggle would end for us only with our death or the freedom of all oppressed people. With the destruction of the Black Panther Party, while freedom was still not assured, we were left with no sense of direction or purpose, no one to tell us what to do next, and the knowledge that the job was not done. We hadn't just mouthed the words revolution in our lifetime, we had believed them. We sincerely believed that the Black Panther Party would lead us to victory. The only way we wouldn't live to see it would be if we died in battle. Al Prentice Bunchy Carter, in his poem Black Mother, summed up how we felt. Black Mother, I must confess that I still breathe, though you are still not free. What could justify my crying start? Forgive my coward's heart. But blame me not the sheepish me, for I have just awakened from a deep, deep sleep, and I be hazed and dazed and scared, and vipers fester in my hair. Black Mother, I curse your drudging years, the rapes and heartbreaks, sweat and tears, but this cannot redeem the fact. You cried in pain, I turned my back, and ran into the mire's fog, and watched while you were dogged, and died 1,000 deaths. But I swear I'll seize night's dark and gloom. A rose I'll wear to honor you, and when I fall, a rose in hand, you'll be free and I a man. For a slave of natural death who dies can't balance out to 2 dead flies. I'd rather be without the shame, a bullet lodged within my brain. If I were not to reach our goal, let bleeding cancer torment my soul. And as I'm sure you all are aware, Al Prentice Bunchy Carter, co-founder, Minister of Defense of the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, right out here in Los Angeles. Assassinated on the campus of UCLA along with his comrade John Huggins, January 17th, 1969, by agents of the state wearing the garb of the US organization. I might need another 2-minute break or some more ginless juice. We had experienced the death and or imprisonment of countless of our brothers and sisters who had struggled right beside us, slept in the beds with us, eaten at the same table with us. As I write this, the picture of Twyman Meyer's bullet-riddled body flashes before my eyes. Shot so many times that his legs were almost shot off. Then the desecration of his funeral by the FBI's jumping from behind tombstones and out of trees at the cemetery with sawed-off shotguns and machine guns pointed toward the mourners. Quote, "This is your FBI. Get out of the cars with your hands in the air and line up in a single file with enough distance between each of you so we can see you clearly." End quote. This is what was said at his funeral. Pictures pop in and out of our minds with no prompting. Then there were the murders of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, Al Prentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, Sandra Pratt, Little Bobby Hutton, not to mention Fred Bennett, the countless shootouts, the infiltrations and setups that left you leery of strangers or of anyone getting too close or acting too friendly. This left you constantly on guard and under the pressure of not knowing who your friends were and from which direction the next threat was coming. Sandra Pratt, member of the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, also out here in Los Angeles, married to Geronimo Gijaga Pratt, was found murdered in 1971. She was 9 months pregnant. Her body was found in a sleeping bag out in what is known as Linwood. It's like close to Compton, on the way to Compton, and Watts, Compton area. She had been shot in the stomach, killing the unborn child. And of course, she had been also killed. That murder has never been solved. Still, I think I'm one of the lucky ones. In 1983, after serving 8 years and 8 months of a 40-year sentence, I was released on parole. While in prison, I maintained my commitment to the struggle for the liberation of Black and oppressed people. What kept me going was knowing that the reason they were killing and locking up Panthers was to break them and therefore to break the back of the struggle. I was determined that I would survive and, one way or the other, live to fight another day. We languished in the prisons and watched the growing lack of activity on the streets and promised ourselves that things would be different when we came home. Our intense belief in the rightness and justness of our cause and that things would be different when we returned to the streets, our awareness that we are still alive while our people's conditions have grown worse despite all our sacrifices. All this produces a traumatic shock to our system. This is the ultimate shock. We survived while others died. Despite all their intents and purposes, their deaths were in vain. The struggle hasn't been won. I contend that these elements have caused us to suffer post-traumatic stress disorder. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, also known as the DSM, defines post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as, quote, an anxiety disorder caused by the exposure to a psychologically distressing event that is outside the range of usual human experiences, end quote. Such events might include watching a friend die violently or unexpectedly, experiencing serious threats to home or family, or living under constant or prolonged fear or threat. PTSD symptoms include the following: recurring dreams while asleep or intrusive thoughts while awake of the traumatic events, flashbacks to the incidents triggered by sounds or pictures or elusive smells, inability to make or maintain relationships or friendships, emotional isolation, fantasies about living alone on a mountain or other isolated place, feeling that no one is able to understand his or her situation, or that no one would believe it if he or she tried to explain it. Constant fear of losing control and therefore refusing to allow oneself to show or feel emotions. Sense of helplessness, worthlessness, dejection. Feelings of guilt because comrades or friends who worked alongside you are in jail or prison and you survived. Suppressed rage that surfaces inappropriately at family or is controlled through the use of narcotics or alcohol. Inability to sleep. Being uncomfortable when in a crowded room or around a lot of people. Startle response. Inability to trust anyone. Substance or alcohol abuse, usually to numb the pain or drown out the memories, guilt, or both. Inability to maintain a job or deal with authority figures. Since coming home from prison, I'd become more and more disillusioned with my comrades and the things I saw happening around me. I'd become dismayed by their seeming loss of principles and vacillation. I knew that I couldn't go back on my beliefs and principles because the ghosts of Twyman Myers Robert Webb, Anthony Kimu White, Timothy Red Adams, and all those other Rads would let me, nor could I turn my back on my comrades inside prison. As I looked over the list of PTSD symptoms, I recognized myself. And the first step to resolving the problem is recognizing that it exists. And it wasn't just me. More and more, there seemed to be some kind of pattern developing in the behavior of my other comrades who had survived the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army. I decided to do a psychological study of the problem because we too are veterans and suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So these are some of the notes. Let me see. Well, we'll see. So the first note, Al Prentice Bunchy Carter was a Los Angeles Panther who was killed along with John Huggins on the campus of the University of California, Los Angeles, by members of the US organization. People say United Slaves. I don't believe that that is what it stood for. I think they call it United Slaves out of disdain. Therefore, I don't use that. I have seen and heard for decades, and like I have read it in documents, it is us opposed to them. That's what us means, not United Slaves. But at any rate, an organization led by Maulana Ron Karenga, the murder was later shown to be a classic example of machinations by the FBI under COINTELPRO. The cultural nationalist group, US, was founded in 1965. According to a message from Dr. Karenga on the organization's website, from the beginning, the essential task of our organization, US, has been and remains to provide a philosophy, a set of principles, and a program which inspire a personal and social practice that not only satisfies human need, but transforms people in the process, making them self-conscious agents of their own life and liberation. us-organization.org. Sowing divisions between radical organizations was an explicit tactic of COINTELPRO. See Human Rights in the U.S., the unfinished story of political prisoners and victims of COINTELPRO, edited by Matt Meyer, in the book Let Freedom Ring, a collection of documents from the movements to free U.S. political prisoners. That's from PM Press, was published in 2008. Of course, there's also Agents of Repression and the COINTELPRO Papers, which is a book that I read in, if it wasn't the late 80s, the early 90s, by Ward Churchill, who just passed away recently, and Jim Vanderwall. The murders that she's referring to are chronicled in chapter 13 of Lest We Forget. I'm not sure what Lest We Forget is, but somebody out there will know what it is. Okay, there's only those two notes. Okay. So it's 6:15. Finished with chapter 8, and we are now in chapter 9 of The War Before by Safiya Bukhari. How y'all doing over there? Y'all all right? Well, y'all still commenting, so I guess you can hear me. I'm going to keep reading. And y'all bear with my gravelly voice. Maybe I do need to add some gin to my juice. Another piece that is hard to date. In Safiya's original manuscript, this essay was the final chapter, suggesting that it was written in the late 1990s. Now, Safiya passed again in 2003. This book came out in 2010. So a lot of these writings from Safiya are from the early, middle, and late 90s. And as was just referenced, she said she was working on a book but she never got to it. Safiya was working. I'm not saying writing is not work. I'm not saying writing a book is not work. I'm saying Safiya was in the streets, in meetings, visiting prisoners. Who knows? She may have been still trying to plot how to break somebody out. She co-founded the Free Mumia Abu Jamal Coalition in New York. And actually, I can't remember the woman's name. Sally. I can't remember Sally's last name. But she co-hosted a show on WBAI with an anti-imperialist comrade by the name of Sally, whose last name escapes me. Sally passed away, if not at the end of last year, the end of the year before. And I didn't even know she had passed until I went looking for her. Sally, I can't remember Sally's name. Maybe somebody who can remember the name will pull it in the chat. But Safiya was out there. So a lot of her writings it's good that they have been compiled in one place for us, but a lot of them at the time of publication were not recent. But, she never considered herself a writer anyway. But I'm glad she wrote, and I'm glad we have it. Chapter 9, This is Worth Fighting For. Often, over the past 10 years, I've gotten to the point where I've questioned what this was all about. I've wondered whether the sacrifices of the lives of comrades and friends were in vain, and whether the continued incarceration of so many political prisoners and prisoners of war has been for nothing. As my mind returns to the beginning of my politicization on the campus of New York City Community College all those many years ago, I wonder whether I made the right decision. Robert Frost wrote about two roads diverging from a single path in his poem, The Road Not Taken. He wasn't talking about the choice between the path of revolution and the path of least resistance, of going with the flow and maintaining the status quo. But envisioning the choices in life, the poem clearly defines the moment of choice at some interval or moment in life. The point when I was on the college campus at 18 years of age, making the decision to work with the free breakfast program of the Black Panther Party, was one of those fork in the road situations. After learning about the hungry children in our communities who needed to be fed, the children who were going to school without a warm breakfast or any breakfast at all, I could have ignored the situation, as so many others do, but I chose to help, to do something about it. No regrets. That small crack in the window to another world, another side of life in these United States of America, led to other decisions. I was still in college. I was still not so disillusioned with and by the state of affairs in the United States that I was ready to commit myself to fighting for change. I still had a dream of what I could accomplish in America as it was. My first encounter with the New York City Police Department posed another question for me about which road to take. That encounter forever ripped the rose-colored glasses from my eyes. Again, one choice was the path of least resistance, which would allow me to back up and not get further involved in the conflict between the people and the agents of repression. That choice would have meant allowing the police to carry out business as usual policies that placed them above the law. The other choice was to join the Black Panther Party. I chose to join the Black Panther Party. I chose the path of resistance. I was a reluctant revolutionary. I'm not even sure I could be considered a revolutionary at that time. The episode with the police department had just made me so angry that I decided I could not allow them to get away with what they'd done to me. No, I wasn't a revolutionary then. I was an angry black woman. I owe my transformation from just another angry black woman into a revolutionary to people like Robert Coffee Man Webb, Big Bashir Saunders, Afeni Shakur, who was my Winnie Mandela, Michael Setawayo Tabor, Twyman Myers, who I will talk about later, Albert Noah Washington, my mentor, as well as many, many other people whom I worked alongside daily, or those like Ernesto Che Guevara, whom I read about or observed. I learned to look up to and emulate so many. It was Robert Webb who spent countless hours turning an emotionally charged, undisciplined, apolitical, motivated by hatred girl into a disciplined, politically motivated woman. Let's repeat that, shall we? Not so much about Robert Webb, but countless hours turning an 1. Emotionally charged, 2. Undisciplined, 3. Apolitical, 4. Motivated by hatred girl into a 1. Disciplined, 2. Politically motivated woman. He had a lot to work with, huh? Robert would spend hours sitting by my bedside at night going over the Black Panthers' 10-point program and platform, along with the 8 points of attention, the 3 main rules of discipline, criticism and self-criticism, and the 26 rules and regulations of the Black Panther Party. He spent time explaining how these sets of rules and principles made Panthers capable of carrying our struggle through to victory. He used examples of how this internal discipline was derived from the knowledge of who we were and why we were who we were. Robert had fought in the U.S. military and then come back to fight for the liberation of his own people. His weapon of choice was a .357 Magnum with a hair trigger. After he felt I had internalized the political dogma of the party and understood that politics guide the gun, not the other way around, he gave me my first weapons training. He used his .357 to do it. Robert Webb was shot on the corner of 125th Street and 7th Avenue on March 6, 1971. He was the victim of the COINTELPRO instigated fratricidal warfare between opposing factions of the Black Panther Party. While Robert taught me the discipline and technicalities, Bashir Saunders taught me the basics. We called him Big Bashir because of his size. I'm 5 feet tall, so forgive me if I tend to exaggerate Bashir's size. Bashir seemed to be 7 feet tall to me. He towered over me, and he weighed about 300 pounds. Going back real quick to Robert Webb's murder on March 6th, the publicly available documents and books talk about a split in the Black Panther Party happening in February 1971, i.e., it was official broadcast after Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver had an argument on some, I think it was a TV program. Eldridge was in Algeria on the phone, and Huey was in the studio. And then Robert Webb is killed March 6th. Obviously, I'm just saying this to stating the obvious. Obviously, it had been brewing long before February of 71. That's all I just wanted to say. Or March of 71. Anyway. Big Bashir, he was OD, Officer of the Day of the Harlem office of the Black Panther Party. He was a grizzly bear with the heart of a Pooh Bear. Where Robert taught me to be unemotional and pragmatic in my dealings with the world, Bashir taught me that we were working for the people. We were servants of the people. He had an undying love for the people that he tried to instill in all of us who worked under him. Although Bashir died years after the party did, I believe that the dissolution of the party, the organization that many of us saw as the best chance for the liberation of our people, was a major factor contributing to his death. The death of a dream led to the death of the spirit and the death of the man. But coming into the Black Panther Party and being exposed to heavy hitters like Bobby Seale, Geronimo Pratt, Kathleen Cleaver, Richard Deruba Moore, now Deruba Ben Wahad, Robert Webb, and on and on and on, did not have the effect on me that the exposure to an elfin, dark-skinned woman with a very short afro did. Afeni Shakur walked tall and proud among these people. She emitted an inner strength and assuredness that made me say to myself, this is a black woman worthy of respect. Other than my grandmother on my mother's side, up to that point, I had not met a woman I could look up to. It wasn't until much later in my life that I would add my mother to this list. At a time when I needed it most, Afeni Shakur exemplified the strength and dignity amid chaos that I needed to see. Despite the setbacks, slipbacks, hard times, and tragedies that Afeni has undergone and endured over the years, I still hold the image of this fierce, small, strong, take no prisoners, black warrior woman before me. Afeni in all her regality, surviving, setting an example for me. You got to leave, Oil House? All right, now, take care. My mother always says, give me my flowers while I'm alive and can smell them. Well, here are your flowers, Afeni. Afeni never knew she was having this effect on me. I don't even think she was attempting to affect the lives of the people as she did. She was just being Afeni. Maybe if she had realized it, it would have helped her. The lesson I learned first from Afeni is that you can't define yourself by the person with whom you're in a relationship with. You have to define yourself by who you are and what you believe. You have to be a person in and of yourself. If you are a revolutionary, you have to be capable of carrying out the tasks assigned to you, whether or not your mate supports you in that. The second thing I learned from watching Afeni was that you have to have the inner strength to take responsibility for your actions. My mother and grandmother used to say all the time, if you're woman enough to do it, be woman enough to tell the truth about it. But it's one thing for your parents to say something and another for a contemporary to show that thing by example. Here again was a black woman who wasn't afraid to own up to her actions, be they good, bad, or indifferent. What comes back to me most often when I think of Michael Setawayo Tabor is a conversation I had on the phone with him during the height of the tensions surrounding the split in the party. Set was in exile. He was in Algeria at the office of the international section of the Black Panther Party. I was in the Harlem office at 2026 7th Avenue in New York City. Directly following the split, we had begun printing our own newspaper called Right On, Black Community News Service. We'd begun it because Huey Newton et al. Had maintained control of the party newspaper, The Black Panther. A lot of the leadership of the party had gone into seclusion for security reasons. There had been many threats on their lives, and now they were vulnerable not only to the forces of repression, such as the Joint Terrorist Task Force, the FBI, etc., but also to the fratricidal elements within. The Black Panther was being used as a weapon. Things were extremely destabilized in all the offices along the East Coast, but especially in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. We were on 24-hour alert. We were never alone, always traveled in twos. Someone always knew where we were. One particular night, I and two other people were on security at the Harlem office when the phone rang. When I answered, an operator said, "Your overseas party is on the line. Go ahead, please." I said I didn't make an overseas call. I didn't make the call, but Eldridge Cleaver was on the line from Algeria. I asked him if he had placed the call, and he said he had not. Neither one of us had placed the call, but we knew who had. It seems the government or somebody wanted us to talk about something. We decided to talk despite not having initiated the call. Eldridge took the opportunity to tell me that it was time to escalate the struggle. He said it was time to take it to the streets, and that's what I should tell the people to do. I said no, I was not going to tell people to do that. I told Eldridge that the conditions were not right, and I was not going to encourage our people to go out and take part in or become victims of a bloodbath. He told me that if I didn't do it, there would be a second split in the Black Panther Party. I held firm because I truly believed I was right. Eldridge didn't know the objective conditions here. He was more than 3,000 miles away in Algeria. When Eldridge saw he was getting nowhere with me, he put Setawayo on the phone. Set told me I should do as Eldridge requested. I asked Set, "Do you remember what you taught me? To deal with the principle and not the personality." Set said, in that deep, melodious voice he possessed, "Yes." Then he was silent for a moment, and after that made no further attempt to get me to do what Eldridge wished. That was a very empowering moment for me, even though Eldridge was to go through with his threat of a second split and would begin to publish Babylon, Revolutionary People's Communication Network, shortly thereafter. In the months before Set jumped bail in the Panther 21 case and left the country, he had played a significant role in my political development. When he would come through the Panther pad on 8th Avenue, where I lived collectively with other Panthers, he would stress adhering to principles. No matter what the situation, rely on the principle and not the personality, which is a good principle to have, by the way. It was one thing to be told to think for yourself, to gather all the facts and analyze them through the prism of scientific socialist analysis to come to an objective conclusion about what was to be done. It was another thing to do all that and then be able to act on it. All too often, people will say, "This is the correct and principled way that we must act as revolutionaries." Then when it comes to issues they are involved in, it becomes a case of that applies to every other situation except for ones involving me. The fact that when it came down to the nitty-gritty, Set acquiesced to the principle was truly an empowering moment for me. It made me see that on the principle is a worthy place to stand. Set reaffirmed this for me and made it possible for me to believe in myself. He made it possible for me to believe in the principles that he had told me were the foundation of a revolutionary ideology. We were embarked on a campaign to change the world, one person at a time. That change begins with rebuilding the character into a revolutionary character. of which the central component is love. That means love of yourself and love of the people. It took me forever to realize this. I believed that the motivating force was hatred of the oppressor and white people, which, when you get right down to it, is not that bad of a principle to have. It just shouldn't be the only one. I believe that the motivating force was hatred of the oppressor and white people who were the oppressor, hatred of bootlicking black folks who kowtowed to the oppressor, and hatred of other black folks who preyed upon each other. This hatred was the driving force behind everything I did. I woke up with it in the morning and went to bed with it at night. It colored everything I did. I was in destruction mode. The hatred of society was so extreme in me because I was a convert. I had been converted by the New York City Police Department from someone who believed in this society and defended the police on every level to someone who believed nothing they said. I had long ago lost faith in the church and the family, and the last thing I had trust in had kicked me in the teeth. As you know, there's no fanatic like the new convert. We did a lot of talking in those days about making revolution and creating a society where people didn't go without the basic necessities of life. But we had no game plan other than destroying the old society. We taught our children and our youth to hate the police, that they were pigs, and that we didn't have to respect their authority. We taught them that religion was the opiate of the masses, that it was used to keep us down and make us obedient to the oppressor. We took away all the deterrents, the belief systems, and the limits, and we replaced them with nothing. We were able to do this because we did not understand the concept that freedom correlates with discipline. If the discipline is not externally imposed, then it must be an internal discipline, one or the other. Ernesto Che Guevara's quote, "Let me say at the risk of seeming ridiculous that a true revolutionary is motivated by great feelings of love, along with Albert Noah Washington's teaching of compassion, were the forces that helped me understand this. Noah turned me on to Islam, and then he helped me understand the true teachings of Islam. A Muslim is a Muslim's brother or sister. She wants for others what she wants for herself." He went one step further and exposed me to Khalil Gibran. He gave me the book The Prophet to read, and I kept on from there. The most important lesson that stayed with me from these teachings is that our children are not our property. Our children are little people who have been placed in our care for us to nurture and guide. It is a most important charge, since they will one day be the ones who shape the direction of the world. It is not a responsibility that we can abdicate or pawn off on anyone. You cannot truly talk about being motivated by great feelings of love, or even about being a revolutionary, if you do not understand that it is indeed how we deal with the question of our youth that will determine the outcome of the revolution. It begins with an anger at the forces with the immediate power to affect your life. For me, it began with an anger at the police force of New York City for abusing their authority and treating me as less than a human being. It grew into a determination to correct what is wrong with this, to make sure that it didn't continue solely because no one dared to stand up and speak out. It continued with the desire to make sure that my child would not have to endure the same kind of treatment. It was personal, but it became political, and it endures. In her parenthetical comment about Twyman Myers, Safiya may be referring to Remembering Twyman, a lost chapter of this book. That is so unfortunate that we do not have that writing, that we do not have that chapter. But again, this was chapter 9 of The War Before by Safiya Bukhari. So I have 6:42 p.m. Let me see. I'm going to go on over here. That was the chapter. This is worth fighting for. Now we're supposedly supposed to be here till about 7:30. I don't know. But I'm going to take one more. At least I'm going to start one more chapter. And we're going to see how it goes. With my rough, gravelly, melodious voice. Chapter 10, on the question of political prisoners. Editor's note. Hold on. Y'all all right over there? Y'all okay? Y'all still there? All right. Support for political prisoners became increasingly central to Safiya's work in the years following her own release from prison. After this essay, written sometime later than 1984, Safiya returned many times to the subject and integrated it into some of her other writings. Over time, in these essays, Safiya grapples with the problem of how to generate popular support for the prisoners, people who ended up in prison, for their participation in earlier phases of the Black liberation struggle, when militant revolutionary politics and strategies were embraced more widely than at the time when she was writing the essays. In 2001, Safiya repeated, I keep trying to think of that woman's name, and it hasn't come to me yet. Sally something. Anyway, in 2001, Safiya repeated some parts of this essay in one she wrote for New York journalist and longtime activist Herb Boyd. He had requested that she submit a chapter for his book, Race and Resistance, African Americans in the 21st Century, South End Press, 2002. Although he was unable to include the essay in the book, Boyd wrote the piece showed, quote, her profound insight and the passion she possessed for her comrades in prison, a situation she knew firsthand. And as I said before, she ate, drank, and slept the freedom of her comrades in prison. There is no question that support for political prisoners and prisoners of war should and must be an integral part of any movement for liberation. There is no question, that is, for people who have dedicated their lives to the struggle for freedom in this country. Such people realize that it is not possible to talk about a movement for liberation if you fail to liberate people who are incarcerated as a result of that liberation struggle. What is called into question, therefore, is whether or not we are serious about revolution and liberation. I remember sitting in the back room of the Harlem office of the Black Panther Party on 7th Avenue and listening to political education class where Mao Zedong's Red Book was being discussed. This particular day, the passage under discussion was, "Tell no lies and claim no easy victories." Hold on one second. For me. Hold on. I interpreted that to mean go to the people, organize the people, work among the people, and tell no lies about what we want and what we've done and what we've accomplished. We have to build a strong bond of trust with the people and show them by example that we're different from the politicians and corporate businessmen and others who say anything and do anything to get the people to go along with their program. This lesson has been the cornerstone of my understanding of what this struggle is supposed to be about. If we take the tell no lies approach to organizing, then we take the time to build the foundation for a movement that is destined to bring us the victory we say we're fighting for. Then there would be no need to organize separate programs to educate the community to the existence of political prisoners. No, because while we were working to organize rent strikes and take control of abandoned buildings, to create decent housing in our community through our sweat equity, we would be talking about how Abdul Majid and others organized tenant associations such as the Ocean Hill Brownsville Tenants Association in Brooklyn. While we're organizing around the issue of quality education that teaches our true history and role in this society, we would be talking about Herman Bell and Albert Noor Washington and their work with the liberation schools. While we're organizing food co-ops and other survival programs, we'd be talking about Geronimo Pratt, Sundiata Acoli, Robert Seth Hayes, and all the other political prisoners and prisoners of war who worked in the free health clinics and daycare centers, and who went to prison as a result of their active participation in organizing efforts around issues that directly affected the Black and oppressed communities. Oh, okay. I wanted to go back real quick. Abdul Majid and a brother by the name of Bashir Hamid were known as the Queens Two, I believe it was. The Queens Two. Two brothers who were members of the Black Liberation Army eventually, came out of the Black Panther Party, were members of the Black Liberation Army, were accused, tried, and convicted of shooting cops and police. And unfortunately, both Bashir Hamid and Abdul Majid passed away in prison. Unfortunately, neither one of them were able to be brought home. So again, two more examples of some of Safiya's comrades ending up languishing in prison and not being able to be brought home to their families and their community in time. Okay, move that out the way. Because our movement, for lack of a better word, has deteriorated to the point that the majority of our organizing is done through demonstrations, rallies, conferences, and press conferences, the only way we feel we can talk about the issue of political prisoners is when we drag them out for show and tell, or when we need to legitimize what we are doing. I'm going to read that again. Because our movement, for lack of a better word, has deteriorated to the point that the majority of our organizing is done through demonstrations, rallies, conferences, and press conferences. The only way we feel we can talk about the issue of political prisoners is when we drag them out for show and tell, or when we need to legitimize what we are doing, or during the month of Black August. I just threw that in there. That's not what she wrote. This raises the question, are we serious about struggle or are we just profiling? If we're not serious, then we need to let our political prisoners off the hook and tell them, do what you think is best for you. If we are serious, then we need to stop ego tripping, stop profiling, stop rabble rousing, and get down to the serious work of organizing. Talk is cheap, action is supreme. Political prisoners didn't become political prisoners out of a vacuum, or as Sanyika would say, they didn't fall from the sky. They went to prison for the most part as members of political formations. There are more than 150 political prisoners in jail across this country. The majority of these brothers and sisters are serving upward of 25 years to life, and at least one, Mumi Abu Jamal, is facing death. Now, again, this was published in 2010. Several members of the BLA, the BPP in New York, for example, have come home. Ruchell McGee out here in California came home. But new political prisoners have taken their place. Some members, Mumia is no longer on death row, but he's still locked up. We have other instances of political prisoners who may not have been members of formations such as the Black Liberation Army. You have your George Jackson political prisoners, brothers who were in prison, unconscious, came into prison non-political, but became political once they were in prison, and thus are now under attack by the state. So you've got the Pendleton 2, you've got Shaka Shakur, Josh, I've forgotten Josh's name. I wanted to say boy. That ain't his name. But it's a brother named Josh, a Black Lives Matter political prisoner from Ferguson, who's been locked up since at least 2014. So even though lots of folks have come home, new ones have unfortunately taken their place. At the time the majority of these people went to prison, there was a thriving movement on the street. They are sitting there now, and the movement is totally fragmented and in a state of disarray. They are being pulled in a lot of different directions by fragmented organizations that are more interested in posturing as the vanguard and jockeying for a position than they are in doing the work of organizing people. I constantly wonder why it is necessary for them to be fighting among themselves to be the titular vanguard of a movement when there are millions of people that have to be organized. If they all got down today to the task of organizing New York City or any of the other communities across the United States, there would still be room for more help. We wouldn't even step on each other's toes and would be glad to share the work because that's how much work there is to be done. That is, if we were serious about the job of organizing for liberation. The term political prisoner means nothing to the average brother or sister on the block because the terms liberation and revolution mean nothing. The words have no meaning for our people, no real meaning, because we have done no real organizing and educating for liberation. The lack of consciousness among our people, the lack of support for political prisoners is a direct result of our lack of concrete work among our people. The day of people getting involved in struggle for great socialist ideas is long gone, if it ever existed. Our people require examples of the concrete changes in their conditions that will occur if we collectively fight for change. Once they are shown the example of what could be achieved, they are more likely to support struggle. When they are confronted by the way the state, the government, police, and other forces of repression respond to people who dare to speak out and organize and educate against a system that has consistently exploited, brutalized, and oppressed them, they will be more likely to support political prisoners. Some of us mistake the people's anger, frustration, and distrust of the system as meaning they are ready for revolution. Ooh, I'm going to say that again. Some of us mistake the people's anger, frustration, and distrust of the system as meaning they are ready for revolution. It is true that they possess a deep seated anger at the system. It's true that they distrust the system, but it's also true that they have not made the connection between the source of this anger and distrust and creating a revolution. Our people are more inclined to participate in a race riot than a revolution. They would support a drug dealer before they'd support a revolutionary. Why? For a number of reasons, chief being that the drug dealer is in the community constantly. He is known by the community and has picked up on a lesson that the revolutionary used to know. The drug dealer understands that he has to give something back to the community. He employs the local people, and therefore, even if it's pennies, makes a difference in the life of the community. This is not an indictment of our people, but rather an indictment of the deterioration of the movement and our complete loss of direction. I want to go back real quick. Go back to this preceding paragraph. I already read it twice. I'm going to read it a third time. Some of us mistake the people's anger, frustration, and distrust of the system as meaning they are ready for revolution. It is true that they possess a deep-seated anger at the system. It is true that they distrust the system, but it's also true that they have not made the distinction between the source of this anger and distrust and creating a revolution. I want to go back to that because one of my, I'm not going to lie and say it's research purposes. One of the things I do is watch police body camera footage. And I'm not going to call it research because I haven't written on it yet. I haven't done a show on it yet. There was a show on Black Liberation Media, I think it was Black Myths, where they talked with the author of Propaganda, and they went over the issue of police body camera footage. So one thing I noticed, there's so much that I noticed, but at any rate, one thing that I noticed watching a lot of this police body camera footage, and body camera footage from various police departments across the country, it's some of everybody, but I only be watching the black folks. That's my concern, is black folks. You could mistake, if you watch this police body camera footage, you might be inclined to think that, oh yeah, black folks hate the police. They ready to fight the police. They not afraid of the police. All of those things are true, but that don't mean that they're ready for revolution. No, they're not afraid of the police, because if they was afraid of the police, they would keep their mouths shut. They wouldn't be arguing. They wouldn't try to fight the cops and end up in the back of these police cars. So no, they're not afraid. A lot of black folks do not have fear of the police. But does that mean they are ready for a revolutionary struggle to overturn this system? Absolutely not. It's two different things. I just wanted to throw that in there. This is not an indictment of our people, but rather an indictment of the deterioration of the movement and our complete loss of direction. At some point, we should have been able to stop and make an assessment of the state of the movement, especially following the major government offensives against the revolution, COINTELPRO, and the destruction of the Black Panther Party. We seem to have forgotten everything we ever learned about revolution, that it's about the people, It's about making qualitative and quantitative changes in the conditions of our people. Revolution is not about gaining name or organizational recognition at the expense of building a foundation for a movement that will lead us to victory. In order to create the conditions for revolution, we must go back to basics and deal with the fact that revolution is protracted. It doesn't happen overnight. Therefore, we have the time to make sure we lay the correct foundation and build a strong movement based on work. This is the only real way we can build the necessary support to free our political prisoners and prisoners of war. A final word to our political prisoners. We used to know that prison was a microcosm of society. That is, we recognized the truism that the conditions of the people who came through the doors of the prison reflected the state of the society without. Think back to what was happening on the streets at the time you were incarcerated. Think back to the activities that were going on among the prisoners in the institutions. Now compare that to what the people coming into the prisons today are talking about and doing, and you can deduce for yourself the state of the movement. Just as we have a job to do out here, you have a job to do in there. Being in prison does not release you from your obligation to educate, to liberate. Ooh, you're going to put more work on these people. Being in prison does not release you from your obligation to educate, to liberate. Some of you seem to have forgotten that. What being in prison does is change the venue in which you organize. It changes the playing field. I remember another class that took place in the Harlem office of the Black Panther Party. This lesson had to do with the 10-10-10 program. This was a lesson on organizing. We had to learn the 10-point program and platform of the party. We had to learn the 26 rules of the party. We had to learn the 8 points of attention and the 3 main rules of discipline. We had to learn the motto and primary objective, then internalize all of it. We had to learn and internalize it for the day when the offices would no longer be open and available to us. We had to learn it for the day when we would be on our own without other Panthers, so that we could carry out the tasks of the revolution. Once we internalized these teachings, we were ready to go out and organize. The theory was that if each one of us organized 10 people, and those people organized 10 people, and those people organized 10 people, then by the time the third group organized 10 people each, we would number 10,000 people. Now, I'm not going to try and count this up because I'm bad at math. It's a time-consuming method of organizing, but it's tried and true. This was the approach to organizing that I used in my section when I was in the party. During the time I was incarcerated in Goochland, Virginia, the people in my section in the community stood by me and sent me packages and cards. They were there waiting when I was released from prison in 1983. Organizations come and go, but we have to create within our people the spirit of struggle. We have to build a movement to liberate our people. The issue of political prisoners is part of that movement that we are building. And in building that movement, we must understand that this is not a separate issue. It is an integral part of that movement. It can't be put in front of the movement, and it can't be an afterthought. It must be woven into the very fiber. Hmm. A gallant, a gallant warrior and revolutionary passes in the New York Amsterdam News has talking about Safiya. It's dated August 28th, 2003. Miles' Red Book, Chapter 6, The Question of Sexism Within the Black Panther Party. That's Chapter 6 of Safiya's book. Number 3, Abdul Majid Anthony Laborde is a political prisoner in New York State, one of the Queen's Two. He was arrested in 2000. He was arrested in 1982, badly beaten upon arrest, and later convicted of a 1981 incident in Queens in which a police officer was killed in a shootout, with his co-defendant Bashir Hamid James York, who died in prison in August 2008. Abdul was tried 3 times because the first 2 juries did not find the Queen's Two guilty. In 1985, the Queen's Two were denied a new trial following an appeal claiming that the exclusion of black people from the jury in their third trial violated their right to a fair trial. These people do not want black people on juries. Herman Bell and Albert Nur Washington are 2 of the New York 3, members of the Black Panther Party, who were convicted of the 1970 killing of 2 New York City police officers. Jalil Muntakim, formerly known as Anthony Bottom, is the 3rd. Nur died of cancer in prison in 2000. Herman and Jalil remain in prison in New York State, having been denied parole several times, despite the support of the son and other family members of the policemen killed in the case. What just happened? I'll be darned. We went over to blood in my eye. That is not what I was looking for. But yeah, that is from, I guess, 2000. Well, the book was published in 2010. Since that time, Herman Bell and Jalil have both been released from prison. So, trying to. Oh my goodness. Yeah, text spicy. Text spicy. Text spicy. I was trying to go through the notes, and I ended up hitting something, trying to get back to it to see what I missed. Building support for political prisoners and prisoners of war. No, that's not it. Hold on. There. Okay. Well, there are 4 notes. 4 notes. Yes, 4 notes. So I was almost on that last note. Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm trying to get it together. Y'all know how I do. So as I was saying, Herman Bell and Jalil are now both out of prison and are both still alive, fortunately. They did not die in prison, and they did not die as soon as they got out. It took 2 trials to convict the New York Three. Discrepancies in various pieces of evidence were never fully resolved. Um, there was also the case of the San Francisco Eight, where they were attempting to use confessions coerced via torture. That was a separate case. But Herman and Jalil were also looped into that case also. But anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Liberation schools were community education projects of the Black Panther Party. In the early days of the Panthers, Huey Newton and others went door to door in Oakland asking community members to name the goals they felt would better their community. From this process arose the party's 10-point program, which was printed in every edition of the paper, and she includes them here in this chapter. We want freedom, etc., and so on, which I am not going to read because you all should be familiar with it, but you can read it yourself. The other items Safiya names were internal rules of the party. In an undated pamphlet, notes on the Black Panther Party, its basic working papers, and policy statements, Safiya wrote, 3 basic documents are the foundation from which all the theory and practice that flowed from the Black Panther Party outward was produced. It is impossible to receive a clear and undistorted picture of what the Black Panther Party was truly about without an understanding of the politics that guided it. In developing the guiding principles of the Black Panther Party, much effort went into studying revolutionary struggles going on around the world. Particular study was given to Mao Zedong in China, Kim Il sung in North Korea, Carlos Marighella and the Tupamaros in Uruguay, Amilcar Cabral. This says in Mozambique. Amilcar Cabral was in Guinea-Bissau. Samora Machel was in Mozambique. And Fidel Castro in Cuba. In our own backyard, the Black Panther Party saw itself as the collective heirs of Malcolm X, who now stood 10 feet tall, facing the wrath of the racist pig oppressor. So, the next chapter is building support for political prisoners of war incarcerated in North America. That is chapter 11 of Safiya's book, The War Before. I am not going to get into that today because can you see over here? No, you can't see it. It says over here that it is 7:14 p.m., which is 10:14 on the East Coast. But if you look right here, let's see, can y'all see this? We are on page 150 of 312 pages. So we kind of, sort of, halfway through. But again, as I said, we are going, even though today is the last Sunday of Black August, I am committed to finishing all of the chapters, all of the pages of Safiya's book. It's not 312 pages in Sanyika's book, Stand Up, Struggle Forward, but we're going to finish that too. So that means next Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel. Excuse me, same black time, same black channel. Rootwork here on Black Liberation Media, 5 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I had been doing Rootwork on Mondays at 5 p.m. Every Black August, I try to do something weekly, some type of study and struggle series weekly, because we get 5. We will get 5 Sundays or Saturdays or Mondays sometimes during the month of August. Usually I try to do my shows Mondays at 4, but I reserve those shows more for having guests and interviewing people I think you need to know about. I haven't At the moment, I'm trying to track down Ashanti Alston. I just got his newest book, Anarchist Panther, a book of essays. So I'm trying to track him down. I'm sure other people are also. I got a few other folks I'm trying to track down. But until I get to them, I'll be doing this on Sundays at 5 p.m. Let me see here. Let me see here. What done happened here? Oh, there we go. No, that ain't it. I'm trying to. I can't. I can't see. I can't see what's happening. All right, looking forward to finishing this out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Baba Jalil and Brother Shep are doing a teach-in tomorrow with a Cleveland group, but hybrid. There's a flyer up on Spirit of Mandela's calendar on their website. Spirit of Mandela is the latest project that Baba Jalil Muntakim is involved in. Brother Shep, I'm going to assume that is Shep Olubala, member of the Black Panther Party and the BLA. So thank you, one Upsimath. Thank you, Amilcar. Yes, there is a Black August Marathon beginning tomorrow here on Black Liberation Media. Please check in. Please check in. It's going to be all day, but if you can, check in from the beginning. Thank you, Will Red. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Appreciate all of y'all for, like I said, coming through and hanging with me. Yeah, take my time. No, not tonight. We're going to go on and get out of here early, Lynn. Go on and get out of here early. Need to buy a second copy of Stand Up Struggle Forward. Gave mine to a brother I met. Yeah, giving away book. Next time, buy several copies. If you can afford it, buy several copies. That way you can give them out and still have your own copy. But that's something to be said, to give away your only copy of a book. You better than me. You are better than me. Trying to go back and go through all of these comments. Hard to accept and too true to disbelieve. And you're gonna have to sound that name out for me. I'm not even gonna try and mess that up. Hey, David Silberg, how you bees? Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for coming through. And you are quite welcome. You are quite welcome. All of y'all's is quite welcome. Sally O'Brien, that's her name. Whew, thank you. Sally O'Brien, not Sheila O'Brien. Yes, Sally O'Brien, sadly, unfortunately, passed away. I never met her in person. We would talk on the phone. She was at BAI, I was at KPFK, so those were both Pacifica stations. Yeah, and unfortunately, I let communication lapse, and Sally got up out of here. I ain't gonna be mad at her. Take your rest. Take your rest. You are very, 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 very welcome. Thank you for this. So grateful. Oh, well, you're grateful. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Appreciate. I appreciate being appreciated. And as I mentioned before, shameless plug, don't let brother Mike Mac Clubbin, be the only one to lift up and carry this show. The Venmo, Cash App is at the bottom of the screen. And the Patreon for Black Liberation Media, that's at the bottom of the screen also. You got folks working on programming for you tomorrow, 24-hour marathon. Please stop through and show your love by way of attendance, viewing, sharing, and giving a couple of coins, nickels, dimes, whatever. We like that folding money too. All right, y'all. So 721. thank you again for hanging out with me on this Sunday afternoon, evening. Please remember to like, to share, and to subscribe. You all stay safe, take care, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace out.
Nothing in Deborah Jones's formative years could have prepared her for life in the US organization. Like many of her generation, she was Black and proud before the phrase became popular. She believed and still believes in the principles for which the organization stood. But her life took a horrific turn on Mother's Day 1970, leaving her in trauma and in silence. In this never-before-told account, Deborah Jones's inspiring story is told. What We Stood For: The Story of a Revolutionary Black Woman by Deborah Jones and Thandisizwe Chimurenga is the compelling and harrowing memoir of one woman's experiences in a leading Black power organization.
Black Liberation Media is a collective of Black and African organizers, journalists, academics, and media personalities serving Black and African masses seeking to further grow in their understanding of themselves, their histories, and the African world through entertainment and news. Please continue to like, subscribe, and donate to the channel so we can further serve you and liberate our people. You can also go to blkliberationmedia.org, get some merchandise, and also become a Patreon member and a member from the YouTube. Please do what you can, share, and show your love as we will show ours for you. Black Liberation Media.